even though we'll continue to let people into the room. I know they'll continue to join. But thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Susan Bonfield. I'm the Director of Environment for the Americas. And this webinar series is a continuation of our very successful series from last year, where we expand on our conservation theme for the year and introduce you to more details about it so that you can incorporate it into your programs and into your World Migratory Bird Day event. I always like to thank our team at Environment for the Americas. We work from Canada to Argentina and the Caribbean to promote bird conservation through education, outreach, and research. And we really appreciate all the work that our team does, as well as all the work that all of you do for birds and their conservation. So thank you very much to everyone. We also have global partners around the world with whom we work. The Convention on Migratory Species, the African Eurasian Water Bird Agreement, the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership all contribute to the success of this program in different flyways. And of course, there's some overlap here, so we share some species as well. But thanks to them for all that they do in other flyways. And we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for our sponsors and our donors. So many thanks to our sponsors and our partners. These are the groups and organizations that help make these webinars possible, that help us develop education materials every year and to host these webinars. So many thanks to our Global Flyways partners who provide considerable funding for the program, to our title sponsors who also contribute. Our friends help to spread the word around the Americas and beyond. And then our program sponsors also contribute to the success of this program and to helping us print and distribute materials or to create materials that you can download from the website. As you know, we've been around for a while now, and we address a lot of different topics and issues related to birds and their conservation. These have all been recognized as significant and critical to bird conservation, whether it's the reduction of plastic pollution or the creation of partnerships, to understanding that birds connect our world. So just raising awareness and getting this information into your work wherever you may be. And this year, we're really excited to focus on community science and its benefits to bird conservation. The art this year is amazing. It was created by Luisa Lucera of Brazil, and I'll get into that in a little bit because we're going to have a webinar that focuses just on art. But what I want to do now is I want to give you a little bit of a challenge that you can participate in as we move throughout the rest of the year. We want to challenge you to gather data on migratory hummingbirds as they move southward from their breeding sites in North America and Canada. You can go to journeynorth.org and find their hummingbird observation portal. On that website, you can sign up wherever you might be, and you can see the maps of what kind of information is there. And you can see that we need more data on these hummingbirds, where they're going, where they stop. Rufous hummingbird, for example, is a species that is in steep decline. We're very worried about it, and we want to know where it is and where we can best put our efforts for its conservation. Likewise, any other hummingbird species you can include in this database. It's very easy to do. You sign up, you go in. When you see a hummingbird, you put in your observations. And then for hummingbirds, it gives you the opportunity to ask a little bit more. You can add whether it's feeding on insects, nectaring from flowers, or visiting a bird feeder. So this kind of information is really helpful as well. So we encourage you to do this. We're going to have some fun little competition associated with it or some kind of drawing for your participation. So Rufous hummingbird is on the move already, and we'd love to see what you find on it. And as other hummingbirds move, we again encourage you to put your observations in. If you want to join us in August, Louisa will be on with other partners to share information about embroidery and birds and art and its importance to conservation and to motivating communities. We will not have a webinar in July, so we'll be taking a break. So have that month, and we'll look forward to seeing you in August. But in the meantime, if you contribute to our programs, if you donate $20 or more, you can be entered into a lottery to win a bird feed camera feeder. And these are amazing. I have one, makes me glued to my feeder on my phone every day. I want to see who came to visit. But this is a great opportunity. The funds that we raise through donations all go to help us provide materials for educational purposes across the Americas. So we donate over $45,000 worth of education materials to partners who want to host education programs about birds and their conservation where they live. So your donation is very appreciated. So thank you very much. And thanks to BirdFeed for the contribution of the feeder for this effort. If you need more information, as always, please reach out to us. If you're not familiar with World Migratory Bird Day and you want to get involved, please send us your information to migratorybirdday.org or info@environmentamericas.org, and we'll respond to you there. So I want to say thank you very much for joining us today. We have a star lineup to talk about technologies in tracking birds and learning more about birds. So I'm so excited to have Holly Merker, Casey Halverson, and Dr. Mikko Jimenez on today. We're going to launch our program with Holly. And Holly is an author, an educator, a bird guide, really pretty much everything else you can do related to birds, I see with Holly's name on it. Holly is also the author of Ornithotherapy, and we just appreciate her support of all the work that we do, not only through her book, but also through her, just her support of getting people engaged in birds and bird conservation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Holly. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Susan, and also hello and hola, buenas tardes. I wanted to talk to you about BirdFeed today. As Susan said, I am a consultant for BirdFeed. And what is BirdFeed? Maybe some of you have never heard of it before. Well, BirdFeed allows for large-scale bird observations through user-generated activity across a global database. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that on the next slide. So, Susan, if you could advance. All right, so first off, BirdFeed has a global reach, and the products that BirdFeed has users in 215 countries and regions across the world. This is a platform, an online database, and it has over 2.2 million registered users, which is pretty exciting. Approximately 7 million bird-related video interactions occur through the BirdFeed platform every day. And you'll get to see a little bit why this happens and why there are so many. And this system has accumulated over 1 billion bird video interactions over the past few years, which is pretty exciting because we get to see birds in real time and live right outside our windows and doors. And this just allows us to deepen our connections with the birds we have and live around us, right? And so it's pairing together an understanding of the birds and the ecosystems that we share with them. And what I like to think about BirdFeed is it gives us this closer view. We get to see the birds up close, and through these products, and I can share a little bit more as we look at some of the videos, we're able to learn more about the birds, but also develop a deeper relationship with them. So let's talk a little bit about how BirdFeed products work. So first off, one of the fun things about BirdFeed products is that they are AI birding tools, which means that what happens is that you will get an alert. So the feeder, or perhaps it's the bird bath or the nest box, is connected to an app on your phone. These products do need to have Wi-Fi connectivity, and with that, once a bird comes in, a video is triggered. There's a motion sensor, and all of a sudden a bird appears, the video captures it, and AI is able to help
You're muted, Susan. I think Holly lost connection.
All right, we think that Holly may have lost connection and she's off the room. So Casey, are you ready to go? Could I move the
Sure.
presentation?
Yeah, we can start.
Okay, we're going to move on to Casey Halverson and hope that we get Holly back on. So Casey, ready for you. Thank
Great.
you. So let me introduce Casey. Sorry to go so casually, but this is Casey Halverson with Cellular Tracking Technologies, which has become famous in the bird world. And Casey's one of the founders and the chief operating officer. So we really appreciate your being on today. Apparently, he's got the extreme technology expertise that it takes to prepare
Yeah.
these tags and these ideas for tracking tools and gathering this kind of information. So Casey, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So I'm going to talk about a couple different technologies here. But let's see. That's actually my business partner and his wife, it's Mike Lanzone with a snowy owl there in the background attaching a transmitter. And that one's called Project Snow. Really interesting. But yeah, you can go on to the next slide. I don't know how to signal you, but our company was founded in 2007. Basically, Mike Lanzone reached out to me randomly. We didn't know each other, and he had this crazy idea of putting tracking devices on eagles and using the cell network to help track them. So I met up with him, and we started designing on a kitchen table, and then soon now, this is our building we moved into in 2020, and we got about about 35 employees right now. And we actually manufacture all sorts of telemetry devices. So obviously we still make eagle trackers, but we can go all the way down to monarch butterflies and really teeny, hummingbirds and so forth. And I'll go in a little bit about what those trackers look like. And then we're headquartered in Cape May, New Jersey, southern tip of New Jersey. It's on the beach, a really nice area. It's actually one of the top migratory points in the world because it's sort of a bottleneck before they cross the Delaware Bay along the east coast of U.S. here. We have our own manufacturing facility and so forth. You probably, well, oops, I'm sorry. Maybe go back one slide there. So we actually manufacture everything in-house. So we have our own circuit board assembly machines and so forth, which allows us to do some really cool stuff. Like especially when you make monarch butterfly trackers, there's a lot of big equipment that's used to make it, and there's not quite a company out there that makes the teeny solar panels, circuit boards that we need. So we brought in everything in-house, so we're able to do everything end to end here, right here at the headquarters. And then you can see on the right here's a rack of Terras, and we'll talk about Terra. It's a bioacoustic product. You can go on to the next slide. Um, and then we'll talk a little bit about wildlife telemetry before we go into bioacoustics here. And you can go on to the next slide here, and you should see there's my business partner, Mike Lanzone, with a one of our first tracking devices on a golden eagle. And these use the cell network. They're solar powered and they have a battery inside. And they can provide even at every second of positioning. So we can get some really cool stuff like thermals and so forth as they fly. I think I had a picture of it in here. I don't know if it's animated on the next one. There we go. So that's I believe it's either a condor or golden eagle, basically flying through thermals. And it's really cool because even if it goes out of the cellular coverage area, there's no mobile network available. It stores all its data and then uploads. So we can get migratory tracks all the way to the Arctic and back. And you go on to the next slide. But those tracking devices, we got them down to about maybe 2 or 3 grand. But there's obviously a lot more species that are smaller. And so we came up with another technology, originally licensed from Cornell University, called the And we actually have several different variants of these tags. But these are like the Life Tag is a solar powered device. It's just like a solar calculator. It just needs sunlight and it's always transmitting. And that's making use of the Modus network. And so these are receive stations. You can move on to the next slide. These are receive stations that are all around the world, actually. Um, I guess maybe I didn't have a map of it. It might be later on, but these MODIS stations are around the world, and as birds fly by, little pings are transmitted, from the little backpacks, and then that data is collected and processed through Birds Canada, and that's where we can get some migratory tracks of some really small species. But this technology is even smaller. So this is actually one of the transmitters for Project Monarch that they're using. But this has got a solar panel, a little antenna, weighs 60 milligrams. It's the world's smallest tracking device, and it never, runs out of battery because it doesn't have one. And we're able to actually track the first migratory or first migration of monarch butterflies all the way down, from various Canada, United States, all the way down into Mexico, up into the mountains. And then now they're actually, well, what was it, maybe in May, they started emerging basically again and going north. So we actually got their north tracks, which unfortunately I don't have a video of, but I'll show you what they look like here. You can go on to the next slide. We're actually leveraging a lot of different things here. So these teeny little tags, and we actually have a variant for hummingbirds as well. But essentially, sending out these little signals, and they're picked up either by a sensor station, by a Terra. You can see a Terra down there, and then the Project Monarch app. And actually, we have a new technology that uses basically any smartphone, as long as it's actually could be any iPhone or anything like that. It'll actually ping off of it automatically. They don't even need an app. So there's actually like basically millions of people out there with these smartphones, and we're pinging signals off of them, through the network. So it's pretty incredible what kind of data we're able to get. You can move on to the next slide. Um, and here's a video here. I don't know if you have to click play on it or there we go. So you'll see they kind of go in different bursts, and that's when they have like a big migration event, and they might hold off for a little bit. Sometimes they go astray. You'll see one guy goes off of the Bahamas and pinged off of a cruise ship, we believe. But then actually one left Cuba there and went across Yucatan. So you can kind of see they all gathered up into kind of around Mexico City and so forth, up in the mountains. And then that's the first time anybody's able to track really any fine scale tracking of any monarch migration, and they put out hundreds and hundreds of transmitters. So it's really incredible data, and it kind of shows, at least for this season, there is definitely some sort of flyaway in place, and so perhaps if we plant I don't know like pollinator gardens and whatnot along those paths, maybe focus on people to do this in their backyard, it might make the monarch even more successful in its migration. So really cool. I mean, we're going to learn so much for this data, but let's move on to the next slide here. And now we actually did hummingbirds, and we actually, the hummingbirds, obviously, they're very small. And so, really, the only way we could be able to track them now is with that blue morpho tag. So there were some tagged along the Gulf states, and some of these have some really incredible tracks. You can go on to the next slide. And here's one that was tagged kind of around, it was in Alabama. It went all the way up to Juneau, Alaska. And this guy, I mean, it was just 36 days, and it's just incredible. And then we lost track of it after that. But this is with the blue morpho tag and pinging off all those phones as I was kind of mentioning. You can move on to the next slide. And then here's some sneak peek of some other migratory packs or tracks we've gotten. These are hummingbird tracks as well. We can move on to the next slide. Um, and some more tracks from a banding project that was taking place, I think, down in Mexico. Or no, it wasn't Mexico. It was and let's see. They were down in Panama. That's right. Okay. I think, yeah, they might have taken Panama or Costa Rica. That's right. One of the two. Sorry. Let's move on to the next slide. So we also have bioacoustics. So you can move on to the next slide. I know I was only given 10 minutes here. So this is a really cool device. This is called the Terra, and you saw it earlier on that first slide. This is basically using AI. It's kind of like the sound version of the birdfly, but this is using AI to identify what birds are singing, and uploads the data to our servers. Everybody can view, what other Terras are identifying. You can download the app today. Just look for Terra Listens on Android or iPhone, and you can look around the world. We're really heavy in North America, but we do have some stuff popping up in South America and Latin America and so forth. We actually got something in Grand Cayman, which is pretty cool. And these are some views of the app. We also have global feeds. The idea is that we can set up listening stations around the world and people can tune in, and listen to a different part of the world. And, I think that, if you're looking for something to maybe host at like a visitor center or something like that, it'd be really cool to put one of these and install one because we could actually put it in the app and add it to one of our global feeds, and everybody can listen and learn. And then I also have a migration watch here. So this is a wood thrush, and this is a live look at where it's detecting wood thrushes. So the idea is that as things migrate, you can actually look at the map and see kind of where they're at, just from acoustics. You move on to the next slide. Oh yeah, let me put the name of the app into the chat here so everybody has it. And we're doing things actually to empower community scientists around the world. Had a group, the Zillow family actually had their entire neighborhood set up with terras, and they were trying to basically prevent this piece of wooded land from being basically clear cut and apartments being built. So they were actually able to prove that there were some endangered species that were making use of the land, and they're able to put a stop to that development. So. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Anybody can download this Terra Listens app. It's completely free, and you can listen to some of the sites and look around the world. And I guess thanks for listening. I'll put our website too, so you can learn more about the things we do into the
Thank
chat.
you, Casey. That's just amazing information. And apologies, we're going to have a little technical difficulty today, including I don't believe that Holly has come back on.
Now I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'm gonna need
Yeah.
to go back. I'm gonna have to pull the slides off and then go back to your presentation, which I was gonna actually wing it and do it for you, Holly, but thank you very much. Oh, actually that worked, I think.
Yeah, that did work. Thank you. And I apologize. We're having a windstorm here in Pennsylvania right now. And so bad weather sometimes makes the internet and Wi-Fi difficult. So I think I was talking about how these products work. And so thinking about that, we were talking about how these smart bird feed products show us when somebody's visiting through a camera that activates with motion. And then the camera also is able to identify the bird that comes into your feeder or your bird bath, or perhaps it's the nest box. And in addition to that, BirdFeed has a pretty large platform with lots of ways to connect with other BirdFeed users. People are sharing their observations with each other. So this is one way it works. So next slide, please. All right. So as I was saying, let's talk a little bit about this AI powered camera. So with every product, and this is what makes it really interesting because we get to learn a little bit more about the birds around us. And these cameras are able to identify the birds through recognition. It's using patterns to identify the bird. And as you see here on a slide, this is the gray catbird visiting my feeder. Well, at least that's what BirdFeed told me when I look at the app. So if you can hit the advance, that'll show you right here. I want to show you this little box here and hit it again. There is a box, what happens is, for example, if the AI is incorrect, and I love this feature because we can look at who's visiting, and just like people who are bird watchers, we don't always get it correct. And so there is an option to correct that. So you'll notice that the camera has identified this bird as a gray catbird, and yes, indeed it is. However, if I disagreed with that, I can look at where it says wrong recognition and tap that, and I can teach the system exactly who the bird is, which is really fun. It'll also give you different views of the bird that show you how the bird was identified. So in addition to that, you might see new field marks on a bird you've never noticed before, which I find to be really quite fun and a great way to learn. Next slide, please. So one thing I really love is how these smart products allow us to connect with other people in our lives. And this is from my phone. You're seeing a screenshot. What happens if a bird visits? I get a pop-up notification on my phone. I can even send it to my watch if I have a smartwatch. And it allows me to see all the birds visiting. So I never have fear of missing out. I do a lot of traveling with my work, and I'm able to see and continue to make connections with the birds in my own yard. So I love this too because my kids and other family are able to join this same bird fee account, and they get to also experience the birds even though they live far away. And I get text messages from my kids saying like, "Hey mom, did you just see who was at the bird fee cam?" So it's keeping families connected. It's a great conversation piece. And I really love this because birds do bring people together. And that's just another wonderful thing about them. Next slide, please. So this is what one of the feeder products looks like, and this actually has two different cameras on it, but you can actually buy it for it with three cameras. With the two cameras, it's great. It gives me different views, and as you can see here, this was during a snowstorm in my yard a couple months ago. Where at this feeder right now, I think we have 4 different species visiting, and I love watching the interactions of the birds together and who's visiting, who tolerates who. What kind of behavioral interactions are there? And then, okay, next slide, please. And so we can hit the play on this one. Again, with these products, we're able to watch interactions. And normally, this is a northern cardinal. And normally, northern cardinal sits the other way on bird feeders facing the seed. But in this case, I found this really unusual. The cardinal was facing out. What was really neat was being able to see that indeed there is another bird sitting on the feeder, and this one is the American goldfinch. But when I looked really close at the video, because of this unusual posture, I noticed there was a female cardinal sitting in the tree. You can't really see it well from here, but it's pretty funny. And that's why he was posing, because this was just around when they start the courtship period. So next slide, please. So in addition to the many different feeders, there's also these wonderful opportunities to attract birds through water features. And so the bird feed bath is my favorite product because, not all birds come to feeders. A lot of birds come to water features though, and all birds need water. So thinking about it from that perspective, and these feeders also have a bubbler feature, and birds are attracted to the sound of moving water. And what happens is if you want to hit play for this next one, you'll get to see the cardinal in action. Here is a little bit of an interaction here. So the cardinal is coming into the bird bath here, but all of a sudden, whoops, the blue jay came in and pushed the cardinal out. And then another blue jay was getting excited. And as you can see, this is a really great way to understand these birds. Next slide, or press it forward, and then you'll get to see that not only does it have the wider view, but you can also see the closer view. So I get to enjoy the eastern bluebird, a nicer look, perhaps even get to know individuals who are visiting the feeder. Next slide, please. Also, BirdFeed has a few different options for attracting birds that include nest boxes. So this one is a nest box we just put up in our yard not long ago. And as you can see, my husband thought it was really funny to put up this sign that says for rent when he helped install it there. And bluebirds only. We're hoping to attract bluebirds. We do have multiple nest boxes that are successfully used by bluebirds, and that he sent around to the family. So next slide, please. But what these look like on the inside, this allows us to observe uh, the nesting pattern of the bird. Next slide, please. There you go. And if you hit play, it'll play the video for us here. You'll get to see this eastern bluebird that came in checking out this new nest box. He's looking to see, is this a new spot for us? And really, I really feel like this helps to lead to a greater appreciation. Next slide, please. Yeah, and if we hit play, it'll play. Yeah, so this is a house wren coming into a friend of mine's bird bird box, and as you can see, we get to really understand, like, how do they build their nest? How many eggs do they have? And then watch some of the intimate feeding rituals. And the cameras are out of the way. The birds are checking these boxes out for a while, so they get to understand this habitat. Next slide, please. So thinking about this, I just want to say how important it is if we're thinking about setting up nest boxes, water features, and or bird feeders. So the first really important thing is responsible use of bird feeders and birding products. And this includes thinking about where you're placing these products so that they're out of harm's way for the bird, that there are no cats or perhaps windows nearby that the birds could strike against, a lot of other things. And there's many different resources to teach you best practices in setting up bird feeders. Next bullet, please. And this also includes the regular cleaning and maintenance for hygiene and also disease prevention. And this also includes the bird feed bath and any bird bath you might have, refreshing the water to control insect pests like mosquitoes, but also to keep it clean for the birds. Next slide, please. And positioning the feeders as complementary to natural habitats rather than replacement for them. So we're supporting the ecosystem that we're living around. Next bullet, please. And this helps us to learn how to support and have an awareness of local native habitat preservation and work with that. And next slide, please. So this is all a learning tool, in other words. Helps us get to know the birds better, but also the habitats we share. And so I just want to thank you and thank you for your time with us, but also with the birds. And if you're interested in learning more about that or how birds are good for us, I'm sure there's many different resources available. So thank you and adios.
Thank you so much, Holly. I'm glad you made it back on. That was excellent, and we really appreciate your time and for joining us today. We will take questions after our next speaker. And apologies, but I now need to go back into a different location in my slideshow here, and I'll get to Dr. Miguel Jimenez, also known as Mikko. And Mikko actually was down the road from our offices in Colorado, getting his master's and PhD from Colorado State University. He's now with Lincoln Park Zoo and their Urban Wildlife Institute on his postdoctoral program. So Mikko, I want to thank you for joining us, and he's going to bring it home for us and talk about how you can engage your communities in doing community science. So thank you, Mikko. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'll talk and have you talked a little bit about my career path. I'll talk a little bit about that in my talk as well. Yeah, today I'm just going to present three lessons that I've learned. These are not comprehensive, lessons for a perfect guide towards community engagement in conservation science, but these are just three things that I feel like have really shaped the way that I think about approaching that. So yeah, I'm going to run through those today for you. You can go to the next slide, Susan. Yeah, a little bit of background about who I am and what I do. As Susan said, I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Urban Wildlife Institute in Chicago, Illinois. And really, my group is focused on studying urban ecology, how to, how does wildlife interact with cities and people in cities, and the science of how that all works. Next slide, please. And my really, I think next, one more time. Yeah, my focus is really on migratory birds within that context. So a lot of the research I do focuses on how do birds interact with cities as they migrate. So next here, and I think one more time to hit the animation. Yeah, so for example, this is a sandhill crane, right? And this is one that I actually took a picture of and saw at my local park just down the block from my apartment here in Chicago. And when I saw it, I thought about this entire context of where this bird has been, something that we can map out using tracking data, like what Casey showed us. And this is really what I study: is how, as birds are on these really big migration journeys, how do they interact with urbanized landscapes? So next slide here. And so my career has really actually nicely followed a cyclical path in a similar way. I started as a research intern at the Urban Wildlife Institute. Next. And then I started, as Susan said, did my master's at Colorado State University, where I studied conservation science specifically. Um, and then I started as an outreach biologist at the Audubon Society, where I thought a lot more about migration and tracking, and that was in New York City. And then next here. And then I did a PhD again at Colorado State University, where I used remote sensing data to think about migration. And now I'm back in Chicago as a postdoctoral researcher at the Urban Wildlife Institute. So cyclical in the same way that bird migration works. And maybe the more important point here is I've worked with community science in a lot of different ways, and I'll talk about some of that in my slides. But I have a kind of different my vantage point on how to engage communities has changed a lot, both as an end user of the data and as someone who's set up some of these programs across the country. So next here. So yeah, I'm going to start with the lead, I guess. I'm going to show you my three lessons here really briefly, just defining your goals early, understanding the network that you have around you to do the work, and then just recognizing that relationships are reciprocal. I think these are the three things that kind of tenets that I try to think about as I think about engaging the community in conservation science. So next slide here. I'm going to focus on these one at a time. So starting with defining your goals early. All right, so next here. So what I mean by that, when I say define your goals early, is I think a way of asking that question is, what are you actually asking the community to do, right? And so I think to get a little bit more concrete about that, let's say that you are next, thinking about doing a conservation science program, and you're weighing these potential costs and benefits of setting up a program. Next, the obvious benefit of wanting to set up one of these types of engagement programs is that you're engaging the public, right? You're finding a way to engage the public in the work that you're doing in either the data collection or, some aspect of your project. And that in itself, I think, is a benefit of some of these approaches to conservation science. Next. A lot of people, and I'll talk about this, have brought up the idea of like data quality being a cost of community science. I personally don't think this is necessarily always the case. I think that's usually more of an indictment of a program that doesn't know the goals that it's after, which is, again, my first lesson that I've learned. But this is something that you also might weigh as a potential cost of, developing a public engagement program. Next. And then there's also this question of cost effectiveness, right? Like per dollar that you put into this program, how much data or engagement or whatever output you're interested in, how much do you get out of that? So next, and so you're going to weigh these things as you try to make this program. And I think my point is that as if you really want to heavily weigh that public engagement piece, then those benefits are going to outweigh the costs. If you go to the next slide. If you really want precise data and you're really looking to use the data for an important management decision, then you might think that these potential costs of community science you might weigh that more heavily. Next. But the reality is we don't really often put weighted values to what these things look like. And so this is one thing that I've studied as part of my master's. And while I did that while designing a program in Fort Collins, as Susan said, just up the road from the folks in Boulder, Colorado. So next. So the question from this research really was like, what are the trade-offs associated with monitoring with community science, or that should say community science, as opposed to professional scientists? And I say that in air quotes because I really think the lines are blurred between what these are. A lot of our volunteers in this program, for example, were actually scientists by that was their day job. But just for all intents and purposes, as I talk about this, I'm just going to kind of use those terms. So next here. So just a little bit really quickly about the program. It was called the Nature in the City Biodiversity Project. And the goal was to monitor birds and butterflies across the Fort Collins Growth Management Area, which is a city in Colorado that's growing really rapidly, and both with community scientists and paid technicians, which is the typical model. And then we wanted to use those data to identify high quality habitat patches, and use that to manage decisions about where the city was developing and not developing. So next slide here. So really quickly, we kind of ran both of these programs in like concurrently, right? So we hired and recruited community scientists and technicians, and then we trained them through the same program, and then we engaged them in actual monitoring the data collection. And by doing that, next, we were able to get a sense for, compare those data sets directly, and also get a sense for what type of engagement successes we had by using pre and post community scientist surveys. Next. Okay, so I'm going to run through a handful of figures here that kind of just break down what we found. And I'm also going to pop a link into the chat at the end of my talk just to, this is published work, and so you could find the work to look at it in more detail if you'd like. So on the public engagement front, on the ecological knowledge, we found that community scientists did improve their ability to identify birds and butterflies. So next here, both for birds and butterflies, the identification increased for all the volunteers. Next. We also found kind of counterintuitively that we didn't see any changes in conservation attitudes. So what this maybe said to us next is that there weren't significant changes in attitudes, but you could see these scores are already really high coming into the program, which is a recommendation that I'll get to in a second. But we weren't actually able to change conservation attitudes through our public engagement. Next. We also looked at the data quality, and this was kind of a nuanced thing. There's a lot going on here, so I'm going to walk through this next. Looking at some of these kind of more common birds like house finches and robins and red-winged blackbirds, we found that community scientists and technicians actually performed really similarly in being able to identify those species and point them out. But next, some of these more skulky species, things like song sparrows or western meadowlarks or house wrens, it seemed like there was more of a disparity, and that community scientists didn't do as well on that front. Next here. And so it was really specific what birds did well and or what species community scientists were good at and which ones they weren't. And then, yeah, this is kind of rehash of the same thing where the number of detections per survey, that kind of cost effectiveness piece, it seemed like the citizen science or the community science model outperformed in terms of we got more surveys done than with the technicians. And this is per paid dollar that takes into account training and all of the entire program. So next here. So actually, you can go to the final slide, I think, of this section. You can skip past this, actually. In the interest of time, I know I'm running along. And skip past to the last. So I think the kind of cool thing, you could skip through to like 6. I'll tell you. Keep going. The kind of cool thing about all of these findings, 2 more, I think, is that they each have a management recommendation that we made to the city of Fort Collins. But the overwhelming thing here is that, I think the reason we couldn't change conservation attitudes is because we were recruiting people who were already kind of interested in birds and butterflies and nature. And so, there's a trade-off there with the type of data that we're getting and who we're recruiting and the kinds of things that we can do with the program. And then more, I think, pointedly with the data, for example, if we were asking these community scientists to identify really common species, it seems like that's a task they can do really well. Whereas some of these rarer or skulkier species, they weren't as good. So I think, again, this goal of knowing that what you want them to do is a really important part of all of this. You can skip to the next thing, and I'm going to breeze through the other 2 kind of suggestions I have. One is just understanding your network. You can skip through. There's going to be a circle that goes around me. Who else is doing the work around you? I'm here in Chicago trying to conserve migratory birds. And I know that there's a lot of folks around me who are doing this work, folks like Audubon, Chicago Bird Alliance, Windy City Bird Lab. And one thing that I've done as I've worked through my postdoc, if you can go to the next slide, in an effort to kind of understand that network, is that we've been holding bi-monthly meetings with all of these groups, just to understand who's doing what. The last thing we want to do is kind of, reinvent the wheel if someone is already doing the work that we're doing. And a lot of this happens in engaging the public, right? And so I think this is a really important step, is just understanding who else is doing the work in the system that you're working within, the city that you're working in. And then the last thing I want to say is that relationships are reciprocal. This is a lesson that I'm still working on, and it's just about this idea of, if people are showing up for you, how do you show up for them? And I think this can take form in a lot of different ways. Next, I have a few bullets here. For people that are volunteering their time, can you provide certifications for them? Are there professional development opportunities you can give them? Are there financial compensation? Is there financial compensation you can give them? And then going to other, if people are going to your meetings, can you attend their meetings and their events? And providing a platform within your own space, where they can present their work and their research, those types of things. And one group, last thing I want to do is just a plug for the Feminist Bird Club. They are based in Brooklyn, but they have chapters all across the world actually at this point. And I think they are really good at this particular lesson that I admit I'm still learning and working on. I think they have a really nice model for this. And last, I think next here, and the founder, uh, oh my gosh, Molly Adams, as well as Sydney Golden Anderson, wrote a book that I really like on this lesson of just, how do you build these relationships with communities through birds? And I think that it's a really nice addition to this conversation about how we do that well. So I think that's all I have. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. And I'm also going to, as I said, pop that citation and my email into the chat. And yeah, happy to chat more. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for joining us for this webinar.
Thank you so much. It's very rare that you find a presentation on, a topic like this where there are actual data that support the work and, involving the public. It's one of the hardest things, I think. So thank you, Mikko. I'd like for us to bring up and highlight Holly and Casey and Mikko for questions. And if you can put your questions in the chat box, we'd sure appreciate it. And then what I'll do is I'll funnel those questions to our speakers to respond to. I have to go back because I know there were some questions. I know there was the question about discounts for educational work, and we're working on that with our partners at BirdFee. We do have a current discount that we offered, and I think that's in the chat. So you can use that discount for now, but we're hoping to expand to some projects as well. Let me see if any questions have come in. While we wait to see if anybody has a question, and please, if you put it in long ago, put it in the chat box again. It's hard to scroll through all of the messages. I guess I'd like to maybe, let's take one to Holly and ask what's the distribution of the bird feeders? I know we have a lot of partners calling in from all over the world. So what is the distribution? Where can they get them, or how can they get their hands on one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, people can go to birdfee.com, of course. That is the website for BirdFee, but also this product, the product of bird feeders and baths, etc., are being sold in many different stores across North America. Particularly, you can look for them at Wild Birds Unlimited shops. Some of them will carry them. Perhaps it might be Home Depot, or perhaps it's Target, or some of the other, I think Chewy might sell them as well, but they're available everywhere. I would recommend Googling to see what is your best option.
Thanks, Holly. And Casey, I'm going to pass one question to you. With the Terra data, one thing that I think is really fun is to look at that map. And I don't think you opened it up, but when you go onto the map for Terra, you see the location of all of the Terra units, and then you can even open that up, and that lets you see what species that particular site is, has, which is, I think, fascinating. I was wondering if anybody wants to do like a research project in their area, how would they or could they access those data?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When we launched Terra, we wanted to make sure that like all the data was collected, we could make it available to nonprofits and different researchers. And so we do have the ability to export data. So if somebody has a question of like species or location, they can reach out to me directly, and we can do data export for that area. And provide a CSV of all our detections. Um, we've had a few people do some research with our data, but we haven't really established like a self-serve process for it yet. But I'd love to collaborate with somebody on that. That's a really great idea.
Thanks, Kate.
Um,
I think it would be really excellent. We have some
yeah.
ideas. Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, I did create a discount code too because I thought it would be just as appropriate for us to offer 20% discounts. So I went
Excellent.
ahead and I created that for you.
Is that in the chat or are you?
Yes, yeah, it's let me just double check the code here. Let me go. The discount code is WMBD.
Oh, okay. So that's for that one. That's also for the bird feeder.
Yes, also for just to make it easier for people
Use
to
that code.
figure out.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then, Mikko, I'm going to have a question for you, and then I'll get back to some of the questions in the boxes in the chat. Um, you had that list of recommendations, and I wondered, maybe I missed this in your research on community scientists versus the technicians. How much training did the community scientists get before they went out?
Yeah, good question. And that's something I typically go over when I have a little bit more time to spend on it. But we do like a group training for that program in particular. We did a group training at the beginning of the season, and then for each individual, we would go out to their site with them one time, just to like walk through what the how to do a point count, as well as how to do a pollard walk for butterflies. And then if there was additional kind of training, if they felt like there was additional training they needed, we would keep going out with them throughout the season. So it was the idea there was, there's kind of a training that a standard amount of training that everyone has, but then there's some amount of individualization as needed. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for that. That's helpful. So now I'm going to go back to the chat and the questions that some of you have. A question for Casey: is there a subscription required for the Terra station? And
So there's no subscription required for Terra. We are going to have some enhanced features that requires a subscription because it uses our servers to process data and whatnot. But right now you get a ton of functionality for free, so you can buy the product. And the Terra does two things that or three main things. First, it streams audio, and it's just for you. I know there's a privacy question in here, which is great. So you can only listen to your own stream; other people can't tune in. It also and it's a stereo listening experience. It's really relaxing. You can actually tune into some example ones and not even have a Terra and listen to the ocean. It also has a Modus receiver, so it's picking up those wildlife tags. And then lastly, it's doing AI bird ID. And so it's not like recording constantly. It's only making a recording when it detects a bird sound. So essentially, like if a cardinal makes a noise, it'll just have a 3-second clip with that cardinal singing in it. There is, I mean, I guess there's probably some way where maybe somebody said a couple words within that 3 seconds, but you can. There's that audio clip, although it's stored on our servers, we don't just let people arbitrarily listen to them. You can make it available for other people to kind of review and make sure it's accurate, but you don't have to share it. We do, share with our scientific partners, but the other thing we've been working on too for privacy is a way to mask human audio. And so we're working on some technologies to process the audio. So if it inadvertently does they won't be able to understand what's being said. And you can think of it as like a security camera. A lot of people have these outdoor security cameras, probably recording audio. It's actually recording and storing the data. So yeah, it's kind of, like maybe people might not be comfortable with it. You can actually turn the streaming on and off if you want to. But it's kind of, I think that it seems like a lot of people are comfortable with, putting up security cameras outside, that may catch audio while you're outside. But we tell people that, put it in a place where there's not going to be that many people, so we're focused on listening to birds.
That's so interesting. Didn't think about that. So, when you go on the Terra map, how close does it get to like your actual location?
That's another good point too. So we have a location privacy level. So you can basically you can say, hey, this is exactly where my Terra is, but by default it'll be within a couple hundred meters, and you can actually crank that up. So it puts you out somewhere else on the map, still in the same vicinity. But that your location is not specifically being shown on the website.
Thank you. And
Mhm.
I'm going to go to you. I don't want to go over this too long because it's not about our focal topic today, but Holly is the author of Ornitherapy, which a lot of people are interested in, and I see that in the chat. So can you just tell them a little bit about what Ornitherapy is about, and then I'll let them know that you're sending us a box of books, and we'll be excited to get those out.
Sure. Well, so my work, not just the book I co-authored, Ornitherapy, but the work I do specializes in nature-based wellness and the connection that humans need to nature in order for overall well-being. That's physically and mentally, and all those gifts that nature and birds provide. And so you can learn more about my work. I put it in the chat box there. I have a website that describes this, but there's mounting research suggesting, and we know this anyway, probably all of us can attest to, how birds make us feel good, feel better. But there are many different ways to benefit from that. But also, this is a reciprocal relationship, as we were hearing earlier about reciprocity. It's not just about what the birds can do for us, it's also about deepening our connections that allow us to have a relationship with the birds so that we appreciate them more, right? And then more people are going to want to take care of them. So that's a little bit more about my work and the area of specialty that I'm focusing on. And that's why I work with BirdFee, because they feel strongly about this as well.
Thank you, Holly. And I see, Mikko, that you answered the other question in the chat box. So that was a clarification about the third piece of advice that Mikko gave for his community science work. Do you want to go into that at all a little more and wrap up our session today?
Sure. I mean, I'll just rehash what I wrote, and I'm happy to please email me if anyone wants to talk more about, what I mean. But this is just to say, I think a lot of community science and community engagement programs and conservation, you're asking people to volunteer their time often. And I think it's worth just considering, can you offer them anything, whether that's just space or whether that is financial compensation or, again, like certifications, things that they can show for their time. So it's not just this extractive relationship. I think that's a really good thing to consider.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, I had one more that I don't know if you can answer yet, but it talks about longevity or any survival costs for use of transmitters on species.
That's a big ongoing question. But obviously it's not zero. But a lot of research goes into determining whether or not the transmitter impacts the behavior of the animal, or obviously the ability to survive. A lot of things are done. Like we focus heavily on ergonomics, so making sure that the device fits ergonomically with the bird. Obviously, keeping the weight at 3% or less is another important way of not impacting their behavior and ability to survive. And I know there's been quite a few studies on this. I don't really have a good answer, but a lot of thought goes into making sure that we don't, harm these animals when we do track them. This is another reason why you don't track 100% of the population, but and there are some rare cases where you do. The endangered California condor, for example, we're actually helping because I believe there's about 400 left, very critically endangered. So we're actually protecting them from wind farms. So if they get near a wind turbine, it alerts the operator and they can feather down the prop and avoid a wind strike. So yeah, I mean, whenever you measure something, you're going to impact it, but we do everything we can, and we use the best guidance. Obviously, the banding lab has to approve, the different types of transmitters and attachment processes and so forth. So that's always at the top of our mind. And I think that I'm sure there could be more room for more research on this topic, but it's definitely not ignored or forgotten about. So,
Yeah, and Casey, I'll add to that because we're working with you guys to, you
mhm,
know, testing of the tags and working to support a student at University of California, Riverside, and she's currently in a 6-month health and wellness study of hummingbirds using these tags, which is amazing because, well, we wouldn't want to work with CTT if you didn't care, and we would just appreciate all the care and work that goes into making these tags usable by smaller organisms. I think someone's asking about a value system, and hopefully everyone values the life of the birds that they work on. It's also such a help to know where these birds go. The data that you showed on ruby-throated hummingbirds shows some very cool things about their migration that it's hard to prove and for us to know where they go. And if a species like rufous hummingbird is declining so rapidly, how can we focus our attention on them if we don't know where they are and what some of those key threats might be where they go? So,
mhm,
yes, it's all a balancing act, isn't it? And I also feel like it's not just your responsibility, it's all of us as researchers out there to be really cognizant of what we're doing with whatever, even if you're doing community science, are you too close to the
mhm,
bird? Are you affecting it? Everything you
mhm.
do out there is important to birds. So yeah, so we're going to be excited to see what happens. But yeah, I think those tags are already showing some really great information. So we appreciate the work that all of you do with the bird feeders and Mikko, you and the communities. Thank you so much for the webinar today. This has been fascinating. And we look forward to more to come. We'll be sure to update everyone on what comes next from all of these projects. We hope to see you in August. Remember, no webinar in July, but we'll return in August with a little bit of a different focus on art and conservation and embroidery. So look forward to learning more about
Oh,
that. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
thank you.